The stench of ozone and burnt meat was a familiar perfume. Dr. Eris Thorne's hands moved with the practiced economy of a master mechanic, his fingers slick with antiseptic gel as he worked inside the chest cavity of a young Marine. The boy's name was Kale. He'd been caught in a plasma burst on the outer deck of the Icarus, a flash so hot it had turned the suit's plating into slag. Now, Kale's lungs were a ruin of carbonized tissue, his heart a blackened, useless stone. Eris was trying to scavenge a viable pulmonary valve from the donor lung, a procedure that was less medicine and more desperate, cosmic-level salvage. Pressures dropping in the biopod. Nurse Lena Petrova's voice was a low, steady hum over the comms. She was the station's other senior surgeon, a woman who seemed to be carved from granite and pure, unshakable pragmatism. We've got 3 more criticals incoming from the Charybdis boarding action. The floaters are using a new agent. Causes rapid cellular necrosis. Looks like frostbite from the inside out. Eris didn't look up. His focus was absolute, a razor's edge. Give me a synthetic scaffold graft and a dose of cryostabilizer. We'll have to rebuild the valve from scratch. And tell the triage bay to tag them with red tags. No one's surviving this one. Lena's sigh was a static crackle. Red tags. Got it. We're turning the morgue into a triage bay. The universe has a sixth sense of humor. The Sharon Deep Space Medical Station was a relic, a spinning hub of durasteel and flickering emergency lights floating in the silent void between the warring fleets of the Sol Federation and the Jovian hegemony. It was supposed to be a place of healing, but for the last 6 months, it had been a tomb. A tomb that was now, apparently, about to become a tomb for 2 species. The Jovians, a collective of gas giant dwelling floaters who communicated in vast, chemical cloud formations, had turned their attention to Earth. Their invasion fleet, silent and terrifying, had bypassed the main fleet engagements and was now systematically dismantling the orbital infrastructure around Sol. The Sharon was next on the list. Eris finally managed to fashion a crude valve from the donor tissue and the synthetic mesh. He held it up to the light. It was a Frankenstein's monster of biology and engineering, a testament to a species that would rather die trying than simply admit defeat. He slid it into place, sealing the incision with a burst of cellular adhesive. He stepped back, activating the vitals monitor above the table. A flat line. Then, a single, hopeful blip. Then another. The monitor stuttered to life, painting a jagged, green waveform on the screen. The boy's heart, a blackened stone, was beating again. It was a fragile, temporary victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Vitals are stable, Eris said, the words feeling foreign in his own mouth. He was used to pronouncing time of death, not charting a path back from it. He wiped his hands on a sterile cloth, the scent of ozone and burnt meat clinging to him. Get him into post-op, monitor him for arrhythmias. He walked out of the operating theater, the sterile white corridors of the station feeling like a tomb. The emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows. He passed the morgue, now a makeshift ward filled with the shrouded forms of those who hadn't been so lucky. He saw Lena standing by the entrance, her face illuminated by the red glow of a nearby warning beacon. She was holding a small, worn object in her hands. "Eris," she said, not looking at him. "I need you to see this." She held out her palm. In it was a small, carved wooden bird, its wings outstretched. It was painted a garish, chipped blue. A lucky charm, the kind a child might carry. "Where did you get that?" Eris asked, his voice flat. "One of the new arrivals. A private. First wave from the Charybdis." He was barely coherent. He kept screaming about the bad air and clutching this. "He died before I could get a history." Lena's eyes were hard, analytical. "It's nonsense, of course. But he died with it clutched in his fist like it was a holy relic." Eris took the bird. It was warm, as if it had absorbed the last of the private's body heat. He ran his thumb over the rough carving. The station-wide announcement blared, a voice crackling with static and fear. "All personnel, this is Captain Rostova. The outer bulkhead on Deck Gamma has been breached. Repeat, Deck Gamma is compromised. All non-essential personnel to designated safe rooms. Essential personnel, prepare for decontamination." Eris was in the mess hall, trying to force down a nutrient paste that tasted like wet cardboard. The lucky charm was in his pocket, a small, solid weight against his thigh. He'd taken to carrying it, not because he believed in it, but because it felt like a tether to something real, something that wasn't the smell of burnt flesh and the cold certainty of death. Decontamination? Lena's voice was sharp as she slid into the seat opposite him. She'd already changed into her full surgical gear, the faceplate of her helmet down. That's military speak for, we're about to vent the entire deck into space and hope for the best. She gestured with her chin towards the viewport. Outside, the void was no longer empty. A swirling, iridescent cloud, larger than any nebula Eris had ever seen, was drifting towards the station. It was beautiful, a tapestry of shifting colors, but it filled him with a primal dread. The floaters. They were here. They're in the vents, Eris said, his voice low. He could feel it, a faint, acrid scent in the recycled air, like chlorine and ammonia. The bad air the private had spoken of. They're not just boarding. They're assimilating. They're turning the station's own life support system against us. Lena nodded grimly. My scans confirm it. They're seeding the atmosphere with a catalytic agent. It's inert on its own, but when it mixes with human biology, it triggers a rapid, cascading cell death. It's not poison. It's an instruction. Stop being human. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I've been running simulations. Based on the rate of diffusion, we have maybe 2 hours before the entire station is saturated. Our suits will buy us some time, but not much. We're rats in a bottle, Eris, and the cat is a cloud of sentient acid. Eris pushed his half-eaten paste away. He looked at the other personnel in the mess. A young medic was crying silently, hunched over a steaming cup of synth coffee. A maintenance tech was methodically cleaning a plasma cutter, his movements precise and economical. A captain was staring blankly at the viewport, his face a mask of resignation. They were all afraid. The fear was a palpable thing, a weight in the air. People are starting to panic, Eris said, more to himself than to Lena. Fear is a contagion. It spreads faster than any biological agent. Panic is a luxury we can't afford, Lena replied. We need to focus on survival, on saving who we can. Eris thought of Kale, the boy whose heart he'd rebuilt. He thought of the private with the wooden bird. He thought of the sheer, stupid, illogical defiance of it all. They were outmatched, outgunned, and outthought. The floaters had played the game of war perfectly, but they had forgotten one thing. Humans didn't just play games. They played them with heart, with superstition, with rituals that defied logic. Lena, he said, a plan forming in his mind, wild and desperate and utterly insane. What if we fight back? Not with weapons, with symbols. Lena stared at him, one eyebrow raised above her faceplate. Symbols? Eris, we're facing down a species that perceives reality on a chemical level. A symbol is just a collection of atoms to them. It means nothing. Maybe not to them, Eris said, pulling the wooden bird from his pocket. But it means something to us. It means luck. It means hope. It means I'm not ready to die yet. What if we weaponize that? What if we create a ritual, a shared belief that can somehow manifest, that can create a psychological shield? The plan was madness, but it was the only plan they had. The station was a labyrinth of corridors and maintenance shafts, and the floaters were already inside. They were not an army, but an infestation, a silent, creeping tide of corrosive consciousness that was dissolving the station from the inside out. Eris and Lena led a small group of survivors, 6 soldiers and 2 other medics, through the service tunnels. The air was thick with the acrid scent of the floater agent, and every breath felt like inhaling ground glass. The walls of the tunnel were sweating a viscous, green fluid that sizzled where it touched the metal. They moved in silence, the only sounds the rhythmic clank of their boots and the low, ominous hum of the station dying around them. Status report, Eris whispered into his comm, his hand resting on the lucky charm in his pocket. It felt warm, almost alive. Gamma deck is a loss, sir, came the voice of a young soldier named Corporal Jax. The entire deck is saturated. The auto-seals have engaged. Anyone left in there is gone. The unspoken word dissolved, hung in the air. Beta deck is holding, but the pressure is dropping fast. They're breaching the secondary bulkheads. Keep them contained, Eris ordered. We're heading for the central atrium. That's where the main environmental control hub is. If we can purge the system, maybe we can buy ourselves some time. The central atrium was a vast, open space at the heart of the station, a dome of transparent steel that usually offered a breathtaking view of the stars. Now, it was choked with a swirling green fog. The lucky charm in Eris's pocket was glowing with a faint, internal light, a soft, warm blue that seemed to pulse in time with his own heartbeat. It was the only thing in the entire station that felt safe. They emerged from a service hatch into the atrium. The sight was one of pure, matter-of-fact horror. The floor was slick with the green, corrosive fluid. The walls were dissolving, revealing the skeletal framework beneath. Bodies, or what was left of them, were frozen in grotesque poses, half dissolved into the floor. And in the center of it all, the iridescent cloud of the floaters had condensed. It was no longer a nebulous mist but a dense, swirling vortex of color, a storm of pure, malevolent consciousness. It pulsed with a slow, rhythmic light, and from it emanated a low, subsonic hum that vibrated in their bones. It was the voice of the collective, a sound that was not heard but felt, a psychic pressure that threatened to crush their minds. "They're waiting for us," Lena said, her voice tight. She raised her plasma rifle, the barrel trembling slightly. "They know we're here." The vortex of color pulsed again, and the hum intensified. Eris could feel it, a wave of cold, alien intelligence washing over him. It was analyzing them, probing their minds. It saw their fear, their weapons, their desperation. And it saw the lucky charm in Eris's hand. It saw the blue light, the warmth. It saw something it could not comprehend. A variable it had not calculated. A symbol. The floaters had come to conquer a species of biological machines. They had not expected to face a species that believed in magic. Eris stepped forward, into the open space of the atrium. He held the wooden charm up, letting its soft blue light shine. "We're not afraid of you," he said, his voice ringing out in the cavernous space. It wasn't a boast. It was a statement of fact, a declaration of faith. The vortex pulsed, and the hum changed. It was no longer a pressure, but a question, a chemical query aimed at the irrational object in his hand. Eris closed his eyes. He thought of Kale's heart beating again. He thought of the private's desperate. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of death or of impending doom. It was the silence of awe, the silence of a miracle. The soldiers and medics stood frozen in the clean, empty atrium, staring at Eris and the small wooden charm in his hand. The acrid stench was gone, replaced by the sterile, clean smell of the station's recycled air. The corrosive fluid had vanished from the floor, leaving the metal gleaming under the emergency lights. Lena was the first to move. She walked over to Eris, her steps slow and deliberate. She stopped a few feet away, her eyes fixed on the charm. "Explain it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Scientifically, how is that possible?" Eris looked down at the bird. It was just wood and paint.